Wanderstop is a game where you manage a tea shop, and coming into 2025 it was probably my most anticipated game of the year. If this is your first video of mine that you've ever seen, or the first time you've ever heard me talk about this game, then you might be thinking that I've lost the plot, or you might be thinking that there is more to the game than just managing a tea shop. Well, the gameplay of this game is more or less just managing a tea shop. We need to farm and harvest the ingredients for the tea ourselves, and we need to use this elaborate contraption to make tea for eccentric customers who come our way, and sometimes fulfill very specific orders. By now you're probably thinking that this just sounds like any other pick X, hotel, farm, restaurant management game, and watching the gameplay you would almost be right to assume that. Because what makes Wanderstop special isn't what the gameplay of the game is, it's why. Jesus Christ, that sounded pretentious. And look, I don't know how to make this review sound anything but a little bit pretentious, but bear with me just a few minutes and I'll try and get you over the line here. Wanderstop is a game where you manage a tea shop, but it is a game about mental burnout, failure, self-expectations, finding purpose, and many more heavy themes. But it is also a game about rest and relaxation. And to Alta, our main character, managing the cozy tea shop is less about managing the shop and more about helping manage her problems, or just getting away from them for a little while. You'd almost think with such heavy themes that the story presents that the gameplay of Wanderstop would often be at odds with the story that it is trying to tell, and it never is, even when the story does enter more heavy territory. The story is more than what I'm letting on, and it's hard to get into it without spoiling anything, and I can't in good conscience recommend that you play this game and spoil what makes the game very special. So I have a bit of a challenge here today. I'm going to try and convince you all why I think this game is worth or not worth playing without spoiling why. Alright, I won't string you along. It's not like that there was much of any anticipation on whether I liked this game or not. I mean, you've seen the title of the video and you've seen the thumbnail. Of course I liked it. I thought Wanderstop was fantastic. Before we go further into this review, I want to give you all a full disclosure. I did receive a free review key from the developers of Wanderstop, and while I don't believe that receiving a key will affect my review anyway, I still feel it is important to let you know anytime I do get a key so you can make your own decisions. Although you could probably tell that I got a key from the developers because this video came out a day before the game released, so anyway. Wanderstop has easily shot up to being my favourite game that I've played so far this year. Most of this comes from the absolutely extraordinary writing. For those unaware, this game was created and written by Davey Wreden, who was one of the co-creators of the Stanley Parable and the creator of the game The Beginner's Guide, both of which are games that I absolutely love. Although I guess calling The Beginner's Guide a game is a bit of a stretch. Wanderstop feels like it is sitting in the middle as a mix of the two games when it comes to the tone of the story. It has like the fantastically goofy moments that the Stanley Parable has and the terrifyingly real personal feeling existential crises that the Beginner's Guide had. But Wanderstop has a voice of its own, and it just kind of feels very unique in the way that the story is told. The character writing in this game in particular is very top-notch. Every character that you meet is very unique and overly eccentric, but hands down the best characters in the game are the two that we get to spend the most time with. Alta, who is the playable character, and Borrow, who is the owner of the shop. I actually think it might be better to play a clip from the reveal trailer because I feel like it perfectly encapsulates what Alta is like as a character and her relationship with Borrow.
I'm not meant to be here. I'm a fighter. I'm meant to be in the arena, in combat. But instead, I'm out here in the middle of the woods. Running a tea shop, it's not fighting, but it's peaceful. And what's weird is that I actually feel good. I'm happy. I can stop running now. I can stop running. This is good for me. I need to enjoy this. I feel good. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy.
Alta is a tournament fighter who went on an undefeated run for 3 years until one day she lost a fight. And after that, she just continued to lose, each loss leaving a compounding weight on her. And so after a while, she decides to seek out one of the best trainers in the world to see if she can fix what is wrong with her. and on her way to see the trainer, she collapses from exhaustion in a forest. When we meet Alta, she is confused, angry, burnt out, and looking for answers. And while she can often be slow on the uptick of why certain things are happening, the reason her character works so much is because she is written in a way that is relatable. Even if you can't personally relate to every single one of her struggles, you can relate to the character herself. Borrow, on the other hand, is almost a direct contrast to Alta. He is the chillest person in the world, and even though he may not have all the answers about the way things are or how things happen, he seems to just not really care. He's an endless optimist who is content with his life, and I like Borrow because it would be so easy to make a character like him boring or just kind of annoying. But I like that even though he acts as somewhat of a mentor to Alta and probably does know a bit more than he lets on, he knows how important it is for her to experience her own journey and figure out some things for herself. Borrow as a character wouldn't work unless he was written with 100% sincerity behind him, and Alta wouldn't work if she was slightly more of an asshole. It also doesn't hurt that Alta's voice actor does an absolutely stellar job playing the character. Though most of the game isn't voiced, whenever Alta has, an inner monologue, it is voiced, and some of the cutscenes do have voicing, and the performance has a very grounded feeling. Alta and Borrow's dynamic is a linchpin of what makes this story land as much as it does, and I love these two characters. While I won't spoil anything that happens in the game story-wise, I do think it's okay to warn you that this is a story where quite a few things are left up to interpretation. Not everything is spelled out to you, and not every character has a clear-cut ending. I know this is where the game may lose some people, and personally I can feel very hit or miss when it comes to interpretive storytelling. See my video on Arcane Season 2 for a more negative outlook on that. But I do feel that Wanderstop does it in a way that I like. Sure, I think I would have liked a more close-ended story, but I also wanted to live in this story and this tea shop for 50 more hours than I actually got. But that isn't the point of the story. Again, it is so hard not to spoil anything, but the story that the game is aiming to tell is done very well, and it does exactly what it sets out to do, and it hits every one of the emotional beats that it needs to. Moving on to the gameplay of this game is very much the most straightforward part of the game. You make tea for people. The game does try to put a unique spin on how the farming and the tea making works in this game. This is done with the hybrid plant farming and the tea machine itself. The farming elements of the game are fine. I like that you can just plant the trees and plants just wherever you like. The game gives you a spot kind of meant for farming, but it just tells you to do it wherever you feel like you want to farm, which is fun. The way it works is that you have different colored seeds, and if you plant 3 of them in a row, it'll give you a plant that will give you more seeds. But if you plant a seed with 3 seeds surrounding the base, it will give you a tree with fruit, which you can use as ingredients for tea. You can experiment with these combinations to make new plants that give different fruit by having a different base seed and having different colored seeds surrounding the base seed. It sounds a bit confusing, but it's very easy to pick up. And it never really goes much deeper than that. And I feel like the game could have really gotten complicated if it really wanted to. But then again, I think if it started to delve much deeper and get much more complicated, but then I think it would have started to become a bit less of a cozy game. And I don't think that's what the game was going for, and that's why I don't think that it went down that route. Remembering what plants do in terms of flavors or how to make them can be a bit harder to keep track of at times, but Wanderstop aims to make this game as cozy as you want it to be. There is a guide that explains how everything works, and if you can't figure out something or you just can't be bothered trying to work it out, there is this thing called a book of answers that will straight up tell you what you need to do as plainly as possible. There is no time limit to when you need to get tea to anyone, and the game goes out of its way to make the point to you multiple times that you can just take your time and play the game however you feel like you want to. And that's kind of how Wanderstop's gameplay is able to nail that cozy feeling. Playing optimally or suboptimally isn't going to change anything. The game lets you play at your own pace, and I think that's why the cozy aspect of this game works so much. Next up, I think it's time to talk about music. The music in this game was composed by C418. If that name sounds familiar, it's because his music was heavily featured in one of the most popular games of all time, in Minecraft. And let me tell you that the music in this game is just amazing. As expected, there are a lot of atmospheric piano tracks, but it never feels samey. The soundtrack boasts an impressive variation in moods and melodies, and it is an essential part in helping this game nail its atmosphere. I love that each of the characters have different themes that play when you talk to them, that also feel like they match their personalities to a T. I'm pretty sure I heard some xylophone in there somewhere, and I like the xylophone. It's an extremely underrated instrument. And look, I couldn't imagine the game without the current soundtrack that it has. It feels like it fits perfectly with the tone that the game is going for. Despite how I've presented the game so far, I do have a couple of issues with it. When trying to interact with certain objects that are within close proximity to each other, you will often interact with the wrong thing. Sometimes the hitbox to pick up things or put things down or interact can be a bit smaller than I'd like it to be. The main offender of this is the last step in the tea making process, where you pull the cord that pours out the tea. Another thing is sometimes when talking to characters, the camera can get stuck in very strange spots, and then you need to maneuver it to a weird angle to see what's happening. And you don't really kind of see everything that you want to see that's happening. It's just kind of a bad camera angle. This can also happen when you're sitting on benches, and sometimes the camera will just do strange things, and I can't say that it ever looks that good when it does that, especially the one time it got stuck in a tree. This game is also much more performance heavy than I thought it would be. I never got any slowdown or frame skips, but I could certainly hear the fans in my PC just begging for help, even when the game was paused and my recording software was turned off. I did play this game pre-release, so maybe there could be some day one performance patch coming, but also any of the issues mentioned could also easily be remedied sometime in the future. If anything like that does happen and the game is fixed up a little bit here and there, then I'll leave a pinned comment below and let you guys know. Although this game hasn't been verified on Steam Deck yet, I did give it a go just to see what it was like, and it ran decently. But I did have to drop the graphics settings to medium to get a smooth frame rate. This is absolutely a game that I feel like would be great for Steam Deck, and the game still looks alright on medium graphics, but after seeing the graphics at their best on my main PC, it's kind of hard to get used to medium. I think if the Steam Deck could run everything with the graphics on high with no frame drops, then I think that it would be a no-brainer to play it on this device. Again, we will just have to wait and see if there are performance fixes in the future that could kind of get it there. I do have one more thing that I'm quite not a fan of, and that is the 2D picture cutscenes. These happen from time to time, most notably in the opening of the game, where it will show these cutscenes done in a still frame 2D style. Basically just a bunch of pictures. I do believe this is done as a stylistic choice to differ from how the game looks normally, but I love how the game looks in 3D so much. And a lot of the animations that are done while the game is in its usual art style look really good. You know, when I look at Alta here on the bench with Borrow, I really loved this moment because the animations show Alta's insecurity, and then when she jumps to anger, you can really feel it by looking at her face. We don't get to see too much of this throughout the game, but when we do, it is great. It almost feels like what 3D Disney movies should have looked like in the early 2000s. You know, this is an indie game, so budget could have been an issue at some point, although the 2D stuff could also really be a stylistic choice. Who knows? I don't really want to make such a big deal out of it because really at its worst, this is just kind of whatever. I can deal with it. You know what? I just realized I haven't really talked about the art style. I mean, you've been watching the gameplay this entire time. You can see what the game looks like. What I love about Wanderstop is how it uses color work. Everything looks great without looking too oversaturated. There are a couple of graphical hitches here and there where you can see the liquid in the tea making machine doesn't really act like liquid should, but you know, that's really kind of nitpicking because, you know, 99% of the game looks absolutely flawless. Honestly, a lot of the teas that you make just look straight up radioactive at times, and it kind of scares me that people would actually drink some of the stuff that I put into it. But, you know, people drank that god-awful looking, you know, unicorn shake from Starbucks and, you know, the Grimace shake from McDonald's, so I guess it's not that much of a stretch to believe that someone will drink a tea that I threw an entire book into. In conclusion, I do not think Wanderstop is a game for everyone. I mean, no game ever really is. But for those willing to engage with its story and characters with sincerity, will be rewarded with a game that has a deeply personal and emotionally driven message that will stick with you long after you have finished the game. This game took me around 10 hours to complete, but depending on how much side stuff you want to do, I'd estimate it could take anywhere from 8 hours to 15 hours of game time. This is a game where the pace is dictated by the player. Wanderstop will be available to buy on Steam, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X on March 11th or 12th, depending on where you live in the world. And despite it only being in March, I suspect that this game will be a front runner for being one of my personal favourite games of the year. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you made it this far, then please leave the video a like, and if you are new, then think about subscribing. And if you have played Wanderstop, please come back to this video and let me know what you thought of this game, because I really think that this game is something special. But then again, I do feel like this game was made specifically for me. So thanks Davey and the rest of the team at Ivy Road for making this game just for me. And only me. And nobody else. Anywho, thanks to my YouTube members for giving me that little bit extra support. Controlled Killer, Yellow, and Melodia. Absolute legends. And if you feel like you want to give me that little bit of extra support with a YouTube membership, perks are on the screen. I also have a free to enter Discord server if you want to come help me make a community of people who like games and like to talk about games. I also have a Steam curator page that I use to do smaller reviews and recommendations that may not make it into a full video. So if you want to check any of that jazz out, then links are in the description below. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one with a review on Split Fiction, I reckon. Catch you later.